Hi, hello there, my darling humanoids, androids, reptiloids, asteroids, or whatever way you like to identify yourself as. Me again. So, basically, because in my last video and pretty much all of the time for the past multiple years, all I have been talking about is yoga, and there have been quite a lot of people who have been asking me to get them into yoga, explain yoga to them and so on and so forth. And I genuinely believe that it is an extremely useful base practice to integrate into your life. And I feel like most people at this point have begun to, at least during the lockdown period. And if you haven't, honestly, what were you doing during lockdowns? But so I decided to make a series of introduction videos to yoga in order to explain to you guys some of the base concepts, the safe practices of yoga, why it's actually helpful in practical terms, not just all of this esoteric things like that, although I'll go over that as well. But, I just want to really bridge the gap between people who do yoga as a spiritual practice, as it should be done, and people who are either not familiar with yoga at all or are just doing yoga kind of unconsciously just as a form of getting fit, physical exercise, and things like that, which is still good, but doesn't give you the full results that you can actually be getting from yoga if you knew all of what you need to know, as well as actually show you the different variations, the different asanas of yoga, because as a bit of an intuitive and free spirit and an artist, I think that structured yoga classes that are taught, that you can find online, that you can get in gyms and yoga studios are great, especially for a beginner. But because once again, yoga is at its core a spiritual and self improvement practice. I am all for improvised yoga, which I will explain to you in later videos down the line as well, as to what that is, how I do it, why I do it exactly that way. Yeah. So the way that I'm going to structure this video is going to be first an introduction to the general concepts of yoga, some of the terminology, because a lot of the understanding of what yoga actually is and what it's for comes from the terminology. A brief history of what yoga is, how it came to be, and then I will talk about in the second part of the video the actual practical aspects of why, how, when, and where essentially yoga is applicable to your self improvement journey and why it is important as a self improvement practice, not just an esoteric spiritual practice or just as a physical exercise practice, which are kind of the dualistic approaches to yoga, which seem to be most common. So let's start with some of the basics. There's multiple main kinds of yoga that are generally practiced. Out of the most common types that are taught in different yoga classes and that you will find online are Hatha Yoga and Vinyasa Yoga. Aside from those two, there's also Raja Yoga, Karma Yoga, Mantra Yoga, Kundalini Yoga, so on and so forth. There's many, many different types. And in general, it is said that as many teachers of yoga as there are that many yoga types. But the main two being Hatha Yoga and Vinyasa Yoga. What are the actual differences? Hatha Yoga is the slower movement type of yoga. It has a lot more attention paid to control movements, the control of the breath, stretching, as well as the more relaxing and feeding into the postures, into the asanas aspects of yoga. Whereas Vinyasa Yoga, which I've seen to be the most common one on YouTube, is the more fast paced one that concentrates more on syncing one's movements with the breath. So, Vinyasa yoga, you will see, I usually call Vinyasa yoga flows because you flow from one asana to another asana pretty much non stop. Whereas in Hatha Yoga, you really pause and get deeper into each posture. You breathe through any limitations that you might have in that asana. Another fairly common type of yoga that is also taught at classes with yoga teachers and yoga gurus is Raja Yoga. And Raja Yoga differs from Hatha and Vinyasa Yoga because it puts less emphasis on the physical movements and more emphasis on inner balance, finding inner peace, creating inner harmony, and is essentially more of a meditation practice. So you can kind of construct a bit of a grid, a bit of a table of how much focus is put on the spiritual aspect of the yoga versus the physical aspects of the yoga, with Vinyasa yoga pretty much being the most physically concentrated practice, then Hatha yoga, Karma yoga, Kundalini yoga, Raja yoga, Mantra yoga, and so on and so forth, with different variations in between. But that is essentially the little grid that we might have. However, it is important to know that a big mistake that is still made by many people who are just getting into yoga practice is that they get into Vinyasa yoga, for example, and they think that, oh yeah, I'm just going to be doing the physical exercise and that's it. I'm just going to get toned, look pretty, so on and so forth. The thing is, the whole point of yoga is to do and execute every single movement consciously. I'll explain why that is important later. But so you can't just do vinyasa yoga unconsciously, just repeating the movements. That is, you can, but it is suboptimal to how much you can actually get out of the practice if you put more thought and more purpose into it, if you understand what the actual idea is behind yoga. But so, as Hatha yoga is essentially the most common types of yoga taught out there, for today, I will focus on that as it is the easiest to give all of the explanations on top of. The book, the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, came around in about 11th or 12th century, and it is essentially a Sanskrit manual on yoga written by Svatmarama. And so now to actually understand what Hatha Yoga is, the term Hatha Yoga splits into two pieces, where Ha is the sun channel in our bodies, and Ka is the moon channel in our bodies. And the term yoga in itself, you have to understand as well, where yoga means yoke, to join, and ga, the path. So the term altogether, Hatha Yoga, essentially means the path to joining the sun and the moon channels of the body, which is pretty much the basis of all yoga. It is finding inner balance, inner harmony, inner peace, creating equilibrium between two different sides or seven different aspects or eight different aspects, depending on how many chakras you consider there to be. Some people say that there is infinite amount. Spiraling out. But so, yeah, yoga in itself is the practice that is supposed to just harmonize you, bring you balance between your assertive sun side and your more receptive and relaxed moon side. And joining the two sides can be done through physical, meditation, and breathing exercises. Oh, and I also forgot to mention Iyengar yoga, which is a very modern branch of yoga which uses props in order to assist people with more limited mobility in getting into the yoga practice. And in a sense, you could say that Iyengar yoga is a type of tantric practice, as Tantra is using the physical world and assistance of the external physical reality to bring you closer to peace and to God. So, in a way, Iyengar yoga is Tantra, but I'll get into Tantra perhaps in a different video when I get to talk about that. But just if you are not flexible, if you have certain limitations in your body movements, I really would recommend before getting into Vinyasa or Hatha yoga to look up Iyengar yoga, as it uses props such as bricks, belts, so on and so forth to assist you to get more flexible with a more calm approach without forcing it too much, which is essentially one of the most important aspects of yoga, is that it shouldn't be forced. You're learning to flow with your body. But so in order to achieve the inner mental and spiritual peace, it is considered in yoga that the first aspect that you should start with, that people are the most used to controlling, is still the physical body. So the main focus of yoga is still on attaining physical health and well-being through the practices. Because technically, you can only get a proper pranayama practice, which is a breathing practice, if your physical body is well. Because in order to sit down and fully relax in the lotus position, for example, you cannot have any pains in your joints or in your back, because having any pains in those regions is going to distract you from finding the inner focus or unfocusing as a whole instead. So the next teaching that it is very helpful to get accustomed to is the Yoga Sutra, as it contains the 8 keys of yoga, include yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And if we break those 8 branches down, essentially, yamas are the 5 social ethics, including kindness, truthfulness, non stealing, moderation, and generosity. Next, niyamas are the 5 personal practices, including purity, contentment, austerity, self study, and surrender. The third branch of yoga is the asanas, or asanas, depending on which pronunciation you prefer. And the asanas are essentially easy, comfortable postures that you put your body into, that were originally an exploration and a methodology of self study, of understanding yourself. And I might actually make a video about Ayurveda, which is traditional Hindu medicine, because there is actually a close tie between yoga and Ayurveda as well, as some of you might know or might not. But there are ways that the limitations and the capabilities of your physical body correspond with your general health. But once again, that is a whole big topic, so I'll get into that in a later video. The next aspect of yoga is pranayama, which is mindful breathing, where, once again, as I've outlined, when you're practicing yoga, you really need to breathe consciously, because breath in Hinduism and pretty much in any spiritual experience is the path to God or enlightenment or higher states of being. It is the breath of life. We cannot live without breath. And essentially, the connotation is that the more control we have of our breath, the more control we have of our life, as those two are interlinked so tightly. So pranayama is mindful breathing while completing the asanas, which are the physical movements. The next aspect, pratyahara, is the practice of turning inwards, concentrating on the inside of yourself, whether it is concentrating on the chakras, on just one point within yourself, within your soul, wherever it is essentially the practice of concentration on the inner being, which is once again bringing more awareness to you, to how you exist, who you are, what you are in this world. And it is closely interlinked with dharana, which is concentration as a concept, that you're concentrating on something, whether that is concentration on the movement, it is concentration on the breath, it is concentration on the 5 social ethics, on the 5 personal practices, on you inner self, whatever it is just developing more and more concentration capabilities. But then contradicting it, we have dhyana, which is instead deconcentration and the ability, developing the capacity to fully let go and drop all sense of control. So once again, yoga is all about creating balance. So controlling too much creates a disbalance. So we need a balance of controlling and letting go, knowing that we have the capacity to choose to be conscious, but at the same time, knowing that it is actually not up to us and everything happens as it should, and we can't actually control anything. And yeah. And all of these previous 7 steps is what leads us to the 8th step, which is samadhi, which is the state of pure bliss. Because once you have mastered your body, you live in truth, you live in kindness, you live in mindfulness, you breathe well, your physical body is well, you are in good health, you have good social relations, you have good outer connections, you have good inner connections with yourself, you understand others. That is essentially the path of achieving pure bliss, inner peace, and everything that we technically desire as human beings. So, samadhi is essentially the full union and the feeling of oneness between the self and the universe around you. So, now, as the first aspect that you're most likely to encounter and to get focused on as you're getting into yoga are the actual asanas, because we exist currently in a very physical centered society where the main point of our focus is physical presence and physical material things. Most people, when they get into yoga initially, their full concentration is on the physical aspects of their well being, which is the body. And once again, we start yoga with getting the body healthy. So, the first point of concentration, aside from maintaining the moral and ethical values, is the asana practices. So, to spread the asana practices of yoga to Ramalai Krishnamacharya, who is considered one of the fathers of the mass expansion of yoga, especially in the West, and an expert in Indian philosophy, taught many students at the start of the 20th century, many of whom later became world renowned, including such as Indra Devi, who was actually considered one of the first, if not the first, woman who was allowed to do yoga practices. Then we have BKS Iyengar, who was the grounding father of the Iyengar yoga movement. Then another famous character, which is K. Patabi Joyce, and BNS Iyengar. Those are kind of the most famous students that you might encounter being mentioned if you end up getting deeper into studying and practicing yoga. And once again, ironically, the teachings of all of those students as they started spreading yoga to the outside world ended up being extremely different. Because, as I mentioned, as many yoga teachers as there are that many yoga practices. So each student essentially has put their own spin on the teachings of original asana practices. And so that will for now close off the introduction section of this little yoga video. So now let's get into the more fun and my favorite part of this video, which is me rationalizing and explaining how you can actually apply yoga, why it is actually important to you. Because we just said all of these super fancy terms, names, so on and so forth. And although I believe that you guys comprehended all of it, how how do we actually apply this? Why is yoga important to our life overall? So, as I mentioned, because it focuses on becoming conscious and the physical well-being, it is essentially the essentialist path to maintaining general wellness. So, because wellness overall, according to some people, includes 8 main aspects, or 9 main aspects, or 7 main aspects. There's different ways to interpret it. 12 main aspects if you believe in astrology, Um, essentially, instead of tackling every single one of those aspects one by one, which is still important and you should still do, and I'll get into that, into this whole thing that I'm making, so not gonna talk about that yet either. Many secrets in this video, yeah? But essentially, instead of frantically trying to do and complete every single one of those aspects and tackle it, what yoga does is, through synchronizing yourself with yourself and the outer world, allows you to essentially knock one by one all of those aspects out the park. And starting once again with physical well-being, physical practice, we then get better as spiritual beings. We improve our minds, we improve our concentration ability as well, which in turn has a knock on effect on our ability to get educated, to use our brains. Then that has a knock on effect on our jobs, that has a knock on effects on our environment and on our relationships, and so on and so forth. And it just gets the whole circle of wellness, which is the most common way to picture it, into full fruition, into the most beautiful way that it can exist. But so why not, for example, just go gym, as so many people nowadays do in the self-improvement community, and I do as well. Like I'm not judging. I love the gym. Literally, gym is my life. But what is the importance of yoga versus the gym? What is the difference of doing any other type of physical exercise versus yoga? Because once again, yoga is about being conscious, and it is about flowing and becoming one with the universe, one with nature. The thing about nature is that it doesn't force anything, it allows everything to unravel, to unveil naturally. It is humans with our brains and our aspirations and our force that we're like, yeah, we gotta go do this, we gotta go do extraneous exercise, get the pump, you get what I mean? Whereas nature, in order to get properly synchronized with it, we have to attune to that attitude of just letting things be, letting things unveil peacefully and calmly, which is what essentially yoga does as a physical practice. You don't force yourself too much. You put a bit of force into every exercise, but there's no fast, rapid movements. The point, once again, is synchronizing the breath with the movement and creating more flexibility. So, not only does it tackle both the aspects of becoming stronger and more flexible, as well as becoming more balanced, improving joint movements, everything like that, it also does so at a much calmer and a much more balanced rate than doing gymnastics, for example, where I don't know, maybe that's just my experience with gymnastics, but that seems to be the common thing that when you do gymnastics, especially properly and professionally, you're ripped apart. It doesn't matter if you have ripped your muscle. It is good if you rip your muscles. The more ripped and the more misfunctioning and disjointed your body is, the better. Whereas that is not what yoga is about. Yoga is all about slowly getting your body to the point of perfect flow, of perfect flow with nature. So, especially in the case if you are not very into exercise as a whole, if you're not very into movement, yoga is extremely helpful as the easiest way to actually get yourself into getting your body to move, into getting yourself to develop your physical body and actually pay attention to it and care for it. And on the other side, if you're a bit like me and you love doing extraneous, extreme exercise, if you love breaking all of the limits of your physical body and literally breaking your body through running, going gym, doing gymnastics, doing all of those things, yoga instead takes you back to peace. So, on one hand, it makes you do things, and on the other hand, it makes you do less. So, as I mentioned, the essentialist path to wellness, where you're getting more out of your practice through doing less. And for doing that, achieving more through your practice by doing less, you get so much more energy and time reserved and saved for all other types of endeavors, for tackling all of the other aspects of your wellness, of your world, of your existence, which is great, obviously. Then another important aspect of yoga is once again the pranayamas, which is the concentration on the breath. And as I've already mentioned in the first part of this video, the breath is the essence of life. We cannot live without breath. There's even analogies that can be made between the way that we breathe and the way that we approach life in general. But aside from these kind of esoteric, mythical connotations of breath and life, there is very practical reasons as to why paying attention and being conscious of your breath is so important. Because as science has evolved, many people, many scientists have already discovered, and it is very well known, that the way that you breathe affects the way that your whole body functions. It affects your health and well being of the internal organs, of your brain, all of these super important parts of you. So, if you don't get enough oxygen in your day to day basis, your brain functions worse. Your brain function goes down, same as all of your other organ functions along with it, including obviously your lungs, by your digestive functions, your muscle recovery is affected, your skin gets worse, your lymphatic system, so on and so forth. All of these things are very, very dependent on the oxygenation of your body. And another, actually, I'll get back to the asanas for a second, because another important aspect is the lymphatic system, which you just mentioned. That is why yoga as an asana physical practice is super duper important as well, because through bending, through doing all of the asanas, you also get the lymphatic system to function better. Therefore, you get less inflammation, you get less bloating, and that obviously also improves all of the other aspects of your physical existence. But so, getting back to the breath, it is super important for our brain function, our organ function, and all of our physical functions. And so, the more conscious you are of breathing, the more you can decrease and take control of your pulse rate, of your heart rate, which also has long term benefits for reducing risks of things as heart failure. And on top of that, becoming conscious of the breath and being able to control your pulse, being able to control all of your physical body essentially, is also very, very great for decreasing stress. So, meditation, along with pranayama, along with the breathing exercises, is an excellent way to reduce stress. And come on, if at this point you don't know all of the dangers of stress and of constantly feeling anxious, then what do you even know? I'm not judging. I'm not judging. I don't know either at one point, at some point. But I'm pretty sure that at this point, everyone knows that stress leads to diabetes, cancer, pretty much all diseases in the world, aside from literally breaking your physical body, are related to stress. The better you are at tackling and handling your stress levels, the better your life quality is, quite obviously. And if we approach this topic from the point of mental health, from the point of therapy and psychology, what are the best ways to reduce anxiety and reduce stress? Concentrating on breathing, concentrating on your inner self, concentrating on what is happening inside. But so yeah, you could say, yeah, that's all great and good, but I could just do all of those things separately. I can just at some points concentrate on my breathing when I need to, at some points concentrate on my physical body when I need to, so on and so forth. But what's the point of doing all of those things at the same time? Once again, synchronization. And what I mean by synchronization is being able to tackle all of those aspects at once. And why do we want that? The more we practice synchronizing all of those aspects together and doing them simultaneously, the more natural it becomes to us, to the point where it is so ingrained into our being to constantly be focused and unfocused, balanced, physically well, mentally well, breathing well, and in a meditative but also in a very concentrated state, that it just becomes our normal way of existence, where we're just constantly at this peak level of performance. And that is essentially what we require as human beings to become Ubermensch, which is another term that I might get into in another video. There's so many terms, there's so many things that I want to talk about. But anyways, if you want to absolutely peak in your world, in your life, you want to first of all sort yourself out. Sort out your physical body, your inner body, your spiritual body, your mental health, and so on and so forth. And that is exactly what yoga gives to you. I personally have a history of struggling, like proper struggling with my mental health. And honestly, getting properly into yoga practice, I believe, was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. And not just getting into yoga practice, but getting into meditation in particular. And I'll also make a separate video about meditation because meditation was especially one of the key things that got my mental health sorted. Before that, I used to do just yoga without the meditation aspect and without concentrating too much on the meditation and the breath. And honestly, it did things, it worked great, served me great, but the progress that I have noticed in my life since I started meditating, oh my days, you guys, oh my days. So that is why it is so, so important to not just do yoga unconsciously, just as physical exercise. Because I've spoken so much about all of the goodness of yoga as a physical thing to do. But oh my days, meditation, pranayama, breathing practices, they are like the fastest way to achieve anything you set your mind to in life. Whether it is even just the goals of your physical body, they're also so much easier to achieve when you meditate. Because meditation, it allows you to clear your mental space, right? Essentially. I'm not going to get too much into it because I want to make a separate video on it. But meditation, do not neglect that aspect of yoga. And unfortunately, I see so much in so many yoga classes that people just neglect meditation. People just come there, the yoga tutor, the yoga teacher just gives them all of the physical movement, but they don't direct them to concentrate on the breath. They don't give them space or time to meditate. And I'm like, this is what I've been missing this whole time. Once I started doing yoga by myself, for myself, and started properly paying attention and giving space and time to meditation as a part of my yoga practice, oh my days, the rapid progress since that point, it's unbelievable. So, yeah, that is another super duper important aspect of yoga. And the way to apply it to life, once again, just literally, if you want to achieve anything in this life, if you want to get absolutely anywhere in this life, you can strive, you can make a lot of attempts or frantic movements to achieve it, but instead, you can just breathe, meditate, and because you're already practicing yoga, you're already synchronized with nature. You end up flowing with nature and with the universe. And what happens? The universe just starts bringing things to you. Because once you're synchronized with the universe, once you're in full alignment with it, essentially any desire that ends up arising within you is aligned with the desires of the universe. And so, in order to achieve even more of that alignment, that is where you want to meditate in order to actually feel and intuit and hear properly what your desires are, what your true core needs are. You need to meditate to clear your headspace from all of these things and all of this programming that we get on our day-to-day basis. So meditation allows you to hear what your desires are, and your desires become what the universe desires as well, because you are aligned with it through yoga and meditation. And therefore, because all of those things are aligned, everything that happens in the universe ends up positively benefiting you and working for you, not against you in your life. And you literally achieve absolutely anything that you desire and that comes up within you. In conclusion, I would say, what is the main point and practical application of yoga? Is literally just to live well. Is literally just to live and joy and happiness and to be a joyful, beautiful person who gets exactly what they want whenever they want it. And that's pretty much it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this introduction video to this yoga series. In the next episodes, I'm going to get into the actual asanas, meditation practices, and all of those bits and bobs of all of these things related to self development, self improvement, and especially aligned with the ideas and conceptions of yoga. But for now, yeah, I hope this serves you well. I hope you get what I was trying to give to you. I hope you understand it and enjoy your time, enjoy yourself, enjoy your well being, and keep improving your wellness. Yeah, I don't know what that was, but bye.